On today's show, we know the conference finals matchups. One of these teams is going to win the title. What are the big questions for each of these teams? I've got one for the Thunder. I'm not sure they can answer. On today's Locked On NBA Game Night.
When that final buzzer rings, you know it's time for Locked On NBA Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. It's the true NBA fans' one stop for all the action. Every game, every night. It's Locked On NBA Game Night. Tipping off now.
And welcome. You are Locked On NBA Game Night. My name is Nick Angstadt, host of the Locked On Mavericks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for being an everydayer. Make it Locked On NBA your first listen today. Joining me from Locked On Thunder, his team's still alive. Got away from a Game 7. What'd you see in the NBA yesterday, Rylan Stiles?
I saw the Oklahoma City Thunder pull away from the Denver Nuggets in that third quarter and had them waving the white flag in the fourth quarter. It was an epic Game 7 from OKC, one that showed a lot of poise, a lot of resolve despite the final score because things started out pretty dicey. But at the end of the day, the Thunder won, and they're in the West Finals for the first time since 2016.
Wow. Yeah, 2016, that's when this network started.
Yeah, I was in high school.
That's the last time. We're going to get into all these series. Obviously, no games tonight, but we're going to preview each of these series. I got Rylan here. We're talking about the Thunder versus the Timberwolves. We also have Pacers versus Knicks on the other side. And then, of course, we got to play Count It Up, where we count up the most interesting, fun thing in the NBA. A Pacers fan got harassed by a Knicks fan mob, and something's going to happen with him. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But let's start here, Rylan. The Timberwolves versus the Thunder. I started to look at this series, and it just looks like a classic, like two good defenses. Obviously, one of them historic in the Thunder. And then on the other side, just two superstar level players in Anthony Edwards and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, basically trying to answer the questions on the other team that those defenses are going to pose at him. I'm going to first start with the Timberwolves. And one of my questions is going to be, how will they score? Who can dribble? Is it just going to be Anthony Edwards and Mike Conley? And how do they generate any offense? And I got a clip here from our Locked On Wolves host, Ben Beacon, saying he kind of thinks he likes the matchup because of a couple reasons.
Hey, Minnesota they're big underdogs for this series. But I actually don't hate the matchup. But here's where I want to start. The Thunder on defense. I've already said this. I've already set this up. They're by far the league's defense. They're historically great defense. The best point differential, or the best gap between 1 and 2 defense in the last 21 years. They're fantastic. However, some of their issues line up fairly well with some of the Wolves' strengths on offense. And the most obvious one is corner three-point shooting. I know that's a really specific example, but OKC was actually dead last in the league in terms of allowing corner threes. They allowed more corner three-point attempts than any other team in the league. And Minnesota was 5th in terms of frequency of taking corner threes. Now, why is that? Well, OKC obviously takes it in the middle of the floor. That's the easiest answer. And they're really aggressive with their athleticism and length on the perimeter to shut down, above the break threes, to shut down mid-range opportunities. Like, they're good in all those areas. I mean, you name a guy, and, between Lou Dort and Casey Wallace and obviously SGA, I don't know, Alex Caruso, like, you name a guy, and they're aggressive on the perimeter and do a really good job of shutting you down in the middle of the floor. And so it's obviously somewhat by design that they're not letting you get to the rim with frequency. They're not letting you succeed at the rim either.
Do you see the inefficiency there? And is there a reason why the Thunder have an issue with giving up corner threes? Is that something that the Timberwolves can exploit?
Yeah, it is something that they can exploit, and your Dallas Mavericks know this well. That's part of the Thunder's identity, is like they're going to swarm you at the ball. They're going to swarm you in the paint, and they're going to rely on their athleticism to spray out and contest in the corners. And oftentimes, just by the happenstance of ball movement, they're a little bit late to the corners, and they are hoping that those shots are funneled to guys who aren't automatic from three at that range. So if the Timberwolves can cleanly make those passes out to the corners and come through with corner shooters hitting their shots, then yes, the Timberwolves can absolutely find some success offensively.
I don't know how they do that with it, like with Gobert as a non-shooter on the floor, though, because the Mavs got away with that with like some 5 out. They did have the lob threat there with Lively and Gafford at times, but then yeah, I just don't know how they get away with that. And then my initial question Ben goes on it later in this to say they need to get in the middle of the court. They need to get in the paint. That's the way to spray out and to hit those corner 3-point shooters. I don't know how many players on the Timberwolves can do that and can dribble against this Thunder team. That's the big question I worry about with the Timberwolves.
Yeah, and my big question is in that similar vein is, will they turn the ball over a ton? Because if Minnesota gets turnover happy in this series, it's going to be a long series for Minnesota in a negative way, because you saw what Denver had issues with in game 2 and game 7. The biggest lopsided wins for OKC was because they kept turning the ball over 20 plus times. And the Thunder have struggled and have massive questions with their half court offense that we're going to get to. But the way to fix your half court offense right now, whenever you can't go make roster moves and can't develop, because there's no, you're far away from the summertime, hopefully in OKC, is to just not play half court offense. It should just go out and transition and to go finish in the fast break. And so you cannot turn the ball over against this team.
Yeah. Just don't. And we've seen Anthony Edwards a couple of like big turnover games, and he's having to have a big offensive load as far as creating for this team. And he stepped up in that way, I think. But going from the Warriors defense or the Lakers defense the round before to now this Thunder defense, that first game could be a big shock for this Timberwolves team.
Yeah, the first game could be a frenzy. Obviously, the Paycom Center will be very loud. The Thunder will be feeling that momentum of having won that game 7 in that fashion. First time that this core's ever played with a rest disadvantage, and we'll see how that works out for or against them if they can carry momentum from series to series. But I do think that Minnesota has to be very disciplined handling the basketball. And like, this is a 48-minute game, and Anthony Edwards will play close to that. Mike Conley is another guy who I think that you would trust to sort of dribble and table set, obviously. And those guys are going to play the majority of the game, but there's going to be minutes where the Thunder can really capitalize and force the issue. And it's just going to be very difficult, I think, to get seamless offense for both teams in the half court. And that's where I think this series will be won, in the margins and in the mud.
You mentioned the rest disadvantage. The Thunder have 2 days between game 7 and then game 1 of the Western Conference Finals. The Timberwolves will have 6 games between there, which is kind of wild. It's wild that they started with the West still and couldn't have just switched that up. I guess they decide this way before the season even starts when these conference finals games are going to be. But that rest disadvantage is going to be interesting. It's nice that the Thunder are the youngest team.
Yeah, I mean, that certainly helps. And it is just weird, not even from a Thunder or Minnesota perspective, just from a league perspective, that the East is being carried by TNT exclusively. The West is being carried by ESPN exclusively. And yet Tuesday, Thursday, like the days that these West games fall on are typical TNT days, and the days that the East games fall on are typical ESPN days. But yet they flip-flop that in this series.
My question for the Thunder is, and I don't know if they can answer it because I don't think they're going to have to, is can they get away with the offense they have? Because I've had this question that you kind of brought up. It's like, all right, well, they struggle sometimes in the half court. Well, sometimes they just don't even have to play half court offense. And I don't know that they're going to have to play it against this Timberwolves team very much either. I don't know that they can answer that question, but that would be my question about the Thunder is, can they just get away with the offense that they have? My answer is probably yes on that.
Yeah, and along those same lines is that there will be games where they have to play in the half court. Like, I don't think Minnesota, for as much as we worry about them taking care of the ball, will have 7 games of just turnover frenzies. But when that moment comes, the Timberwolves are going to throw that zone defense at OKC. It's like the zone has always given the Thunder trouble this season. The 2 best teams at doing it this season were Cleveland and Minnesota, and Denver had great success in the playoffs of doing it. So like, you look at this zone and how are you going to be able to beat that if you're OKC? It's going to come down to these guys hitting open shots. And to date, even after you win a 7-game series and you beat a quality opponent in the playoffs for the first time with this score, you still haven't hit your open shots. You still have not shot the ball well from 3, home or road, really, for Oklahoma City. Can they make shots from beyond the arc is a big question, because if they can, then that's where you start to feel really encouraged with OKC winning this series.
They went 2-2. These 2 teams in the regular season. Do you take anything from those matchups? Because nowadays you look at the regular season, you're like, well, this guy wasn't playing, this guy wasn't here yet, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't enough Julius Randle in that 2-2 because the league kind of shoehorned 3 of the 4 games in like a 2-week period, including a home road back-to-back. And in that home road back-to-back, Minnesota got a massive win in Oklahoma City where they came back with Anthony Edwards on the bench in that fourth quarter, because the Thunder went 0 for 14 from 3 in the fourth quarter and overtime to let go of a 15-point lead and lose that game. So I do think that there's not a ton to take away. The only thing I would take away is, while I trust Minnesota's defense, one of their better defenders on SGA this season has been Jalen Clark. Jalen Clark has not played a ton for Minnesota in the postseason, but he's been one of their very best guys at disrupting Shea. Do they go back to Jalen Clark in this moment? Or is Chris Finch willing to toss him in there after hardly playing him in the first couple rounds?
Interesting. It's going to be an interesting matchup. You guys are going to have your crossover sometime this week, so go check out Locked On Thunder, Locked On Wolves. Great stuff from those guys as always. Coming up, Jalen Brunson, Tyrese Haliburton. The matchup that we've waited decades for in the Eastern Conference Finals between the Pacers and the Knicks. What are the big questions for those series? We'll talk about that and more coming up. Locked On NBA Game Night. Today's episode of Locked On NBA Game Night is brought to you by CarGuru. Shopping for a car should be exciting, like these conference finals matchups. Not exhausting, but between the confusing prices, hidden fees, and all kinds of other stuff, it's just, what do you trust at a certain point trying to look for a car? There's just so many different things. With over 4 million listings, CarGuru has more new and used cars than any other major online marketplace in the US. They verify dealers, provide real price analysis, and give you the tools and data you need to make the right choice without second guessing yourself. That's what the Timberwolves are going to be doing against the Thunder's defense. Second guessing anytime they try to initiate an action. They're going to second guess, but you don't have to with CarGuru trying to find a new car. The best feature, price drop alerts. You know exactly when the perfect car is available on your budget. So you just set it, you kind of set that car aside. You're like, all right, let me do some other research while I wait for that car. And maybe you'll get a price alert where it'll drop. So check that out. It's no wonder Similar Web estimated traffic data shows CarGuru is the #1 most visited car shopping site. Buy or sell your next car today with CarGuru at CarGuru.com. Go to CarGuru.com. Make sure your big deal is the best deal. Go to CarGuru, CarGurus.com, CarGuru.com. Thanks for hanging out with us on Locked On NBA Game Night. Listening every day, making us your first listen. Locked On Thunder, Locked On Timberwolves, all over the place. Go listen to those shows this week. Also listen to Locked On Pacers and Locked On Knicks. They've got good shows covering, and we also have shows that cover teams that are in the lottery, the draft. I cover the Dallas Mavericks. We're in there, and there's lots of shows. We have a show for every single team, so go check it out. Link in the description for all those. All right, Rylan, let's talk about this Pacers versus Knicks series. My first question is for the Pacers. I'm still in a spot with Haliburton where I don't see him as like a superstar player yet. He's not the level of scorer that the other three guys that lead their teams, the SGA, the Anthony Edwards, the Brunsons are. But the Pacers have been just fine without that. Like they've just been just fine with him being who he is and being the player that he's been. But I'm curious if they can get away with getting to the finals, which is what we're talking about to win this series, getting to the finals without that level of player, or if Haliburton is that, and I'm a hater at this point. Let's hear from Locked On Pacers Tony East talking about how he thinks the Knicks could potentially guard Tyrese Haliburton in this series.
Has figured out basically everything that's been thrown at him. Now, OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges collectively on the same team are like huge and a new thing, but he's played against the Knicks 3 times, right? I'll be curious what the Knicks try to do, because like the Cavs did not trap him until the fourth quarter of the final game of the series, right? They weren't that unique in their coverages. Some teams try switching defenses against the Pacers. Some teams think that offensive rebounding is the best way to stop the Pacers, which is something I'm like, oh, okay, the Knicks are pretty good at that. But regardless, he's just even though he started the season so bad that his season ends up being air quotes worse, he is better. And like his feel and reads are better in a way that makes it harder to stop him or stop the Pacers when he's on the floor. And he's not going to, it might just happen because he misses shots or something, but I would be stunned if there's one of those 6.5 shot stinkers to start the series.
What's your gauge on the Haliburton versus the Knicks, this whole series, how it might go?
Yeah, I'm in love with Haliburton. I think that he makes great plays for his teammates and can really be that superstar. And the Pacers have won games by committee at times with their ability to maximize Pascal Siakam and maximize Miles Turner as offensive threats, as well as what they do defensively with where Carlisle there kind of making the most out of this team defensively of whatever they're out there to do. But with Haliburton, I think he has a knack for making plays. And I think that this is the stage where he does take that leap into superstardom in the subconscious of NBA fans. I think that people in Indiana would tell you that he's already a superstar. And look, I get it. Like, you're always the first to know about your guy, but he's going to have moments, I think, in this series against New York in the Garden, where then it becomes crystal clear he's an MVP. He's a superstar.
I guess I could then go to the question. All right, well, who's the guy to get you a bucket if they desperately need it down the stretch. And maybe it's not, maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe the question for this Pacers team is who's the guy to make you a play in some way. And we've seen, like you said, they've done it by committee. They have this 10-man rotation sometimes where they're playing so many different guys. They'll have to make that choice at a certain point. And I'm just curious to see if they do try the trapping method, like Tony said, if they try to take the ball out of his hands. Can you trust a Siakam? Probably. He's won a title. There's a couple players in this series that have won a title. You have him, Miles Turner making plays, Nembhard, Nesmith, Benedict Mathurin, TJ McConnell. You're like, all right, going down the row, I think I can trust some of those guys. It also just feels like Pacers Knicks is just a level below the West, because it feels like we should have got Cavs Celtics here. And I guess I'm just hating all over the Pacers. Today. But I think that's the question they're gonna have to answer is can the others make plays enough to beat this Knicks team?
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly going to be what determines this series. And can the Pacers do enough in the first 40 minutes to not need you to go make one play at the end to go win it? I think that sometimes we get bogged down in the last few sequences, and oftentimes you can do the work on the front end and avoid this whole conversation if you're one of these two teams. But clearly they're going to have to win close games, and they're going to have to get it done late. I do think that Pascal Siakam is a guy to watch, to like have the finishing of a play and this finishing of a moment that I think will be set up by Tyrese Haliburton and his passing ability when you try to put your defensive focus tilted toward him. So I do believe in the Pacers and their chance in this one. My big question for this series really is about New York, and it's about the Knicks with their style of play. I mean, they've been playing a playoff rotation for 82 games now, plus a couple rounds here. You're here at the Western Conference, Eastern Conference Finals. How do you hold up through one more series and to get yourself to the NBA Finals? I think that they can. They clearly have the top-end talent too, but they're still relatively new to winning big games. I mean, you can go down the stats that Boston fans would point to before the series began of how they hadn't beat good teams this season, and now they made it through a grueling Pistons series that was closer, than the series even appeared for as close as it was, and then a Celtics series where they were just flat out the better team than Boston for that entire series. Can they hold up in the East Finals? Because I think if they can, and they have the energy required and the benefit of the health required, then they're going to be able to punch their ticket to the NBA Finals. But you just saw what Denver did. Denver had the top-end talent. Denver had the top-end talent to beat OKC, and Michael Porter Jr. never could get healthy. Aaron Gordon got hurt, sadly, in Game 6, which lingered into Game 7. Even though he gave it a go, he was not himself in that Game 7, even though he was one of the Nuggets' 3 best players for the length of the series. Like, these things take time. I mean, this is you go from an 82-game marathon to a 3-month marathon to try to win a championship, and the taxing that they've put on their bodies to date, I do have a question about.
Yeah, my question is in a similar vein. It's the pace that the Pacers are going to try to play. They've forced teams to play our pace. Like we don't care about the everything slows down in the playoffs kind of thing, and their pace not only to get down transition, but also in the half court being fast and getting into actions too. The Knicks were 26th in the NBA in pace in the regular season, and it was like not 97 possessions about, and they're at 95 in the playoffs. Like, they've slowed down a little bit. Pacers are just kind of keeping what their pace is. They were at 100 in the regular season. They're at like 97, I think, or something now, or 99. And so I'm curious if they're going to be able to hold up on the pace. And then, like you said, they've got 7 guys that they trust. One of them is Mitchell Robinson, and I think the Pacers are going to put him in all kinds of different actions. We've seen some pretty good defensive plays from him in the last round, but how will he look against a faster team in the Pacers? And that's something both him and Kat are going to have to answer.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a series full of chess matches and tests from, I think, 2 great coaches. I mean, Tom Thibodeau catches a lot of flack, but it's clear with his resume, he's a great coach, and he's obviously trying to get over the hump. Rick Carlisle's already won a championship, and he's been doing this for a billion years at this point of sustainably winning and finding success. And like we said earlier, Rick Carlisle is just one of the best ever at maximizing whatever roster you hand him, and he's been able to do that to date in Indiana. And I think that both teams, to different degrees, right? With the Knicks, their chess moves are going to be like the styles of play that they toss out at you. With the Pacers, their chess moves can be simply just a combination of that 10-man rotation that they put on the floor at any given time. And you saw that maybe this is the new trend in the NBA, because the Thunder in Game 7, like, They gave you a little bit of Caruso at the 5 for the first 6 games, but they gave you all the Caruso at the 5 guarding Jokic for game 7, and it completely just threw a wrench in the entire series for Denver and ended their season. So I do lean depth right now after what we've seen to this point in the postseason. So I just think that this will be a very fascinating series, even if it doesn't have the sex appeal of like Celtics Cavs that we all wanted.
It's got some appeal though. There's some appeal for sure. There's appeal
Tyrese
because
Haliburton's dad back in the building, by the way. He's learned his lesson.
No, out. Keep him out. Put him in a suite. Put him in a suite. If anything,
yeah,
like
I agree.
Put him in a glass box where he can't go on the.
Don't put him courtside. Don't put him courtside.
No.
You let him in the building. If you are against letting him in the building, you are completely a Pacers hater, Nick, and you've done a lot to get us a lot of angry Pacer comments.
In the building is fine, but courtside you can't do it again. Like you can't do it again with what he did to Giannis, and I think even Haliburton agrees with that, which is why he's not showing up to any of these games. Coming up, let's play Count It Up, where we count on the most interesting, fun things in the NBA, including a Pacers fan. I'm going to take up for Pacers fans here. They got harassed by a mob of Knicks fans. Who's more at fault? We'll talk about that and more coming up. Today's episode of Locked On NBA Game Night is brought to you by Skims. When I found out Skims was making underwear for men, I was intrigued. I've seen all the ads. I've seen a bunch of things. I've seen some of the NBA ads. Sometimes the memes have gone too far with some of the Skims ads about these, but I had to try them. They sent us a pair of underwear. I got the boxer briefs and they were awesome. So good that I had to buy some more, and it was totally worth it. They're my favorite underwear. It's like every time you do laundry and like your best stuff goes to the top and you're like, all right, what's the number one pick after you do laundry? If you got everything in front of you, it's always the Skims underwear, because I'm like, yes, those feel great. They keep their shape. Perfect for an active lifestyle, or if you're just doing podcasts all day and sitting, they're great for that too. Lightweight material, feels amazing, almost like you're wearing nothing at all. Shop Skims Men's at skims.com/LockedOnNBA and Skims stores. Let us know. Let them know that we sent you. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. Skims is the official underwear partner of the NBA, WNBA, and USA Basketball. Skims.com/LockedOnNBA.
Big chicken, baby. Zion Williamson and porn star.
Take that for that.
Count it up. Count it up. Count it up. Count it up. Count it up.
It's Counted Up, where we count on the most interesting, fun things in the NBA. A Pacers fan got harassed by a mob. There's no other word I can make besides just a mob, like a gaggle. Like a ton of Knicks fans were gathered, and there was a guy wearing a Pacers jersey that was walking through, and it didn't look like he was completely not engaging. Like he didn't look like he was trying to avoid, but he was getting stuff thrown at him. Apparently a garbage bag got thrown at him, all kinds of stuff by Knicks fans. Let's start here before we say what's going to happen to this guy. Who's more at fault? The Pacers fan walking through and like antagonizing this crowd in a way, or they're being at the wrong place in the wrong time, or the Knicks fans for taking it too far again?
This is 99% on the New York Knicks fans. Listen, he antagonize New York Knicks fans by wearing a Pacers jersey? Yes, sure, whatever. Okay, boo him. Say, oh, you're going to lose, buddy. Oh, get ready to learn Jalen Brunson, buddy. You can verbally harass him as sports fans the way that we've all been able to do to stick up for our team without throwing literal garbage on him when he's walking the streets of your disgusting city. Like, this is something that you have to grow up at some point. And I feel like New York is a city full of people who just never grew up. They're entitled. They feel like they can do whatever they want to just passerbyers. The people are wearing Jokic jerseys still to this day because they haven't flown out of Oklahoma City yet to go back home to Denver in their all altitude in their metal water bottles. Do you see us throwing trash at them? No. We say, how about that Game 7 loss, buddy? Get on out of here. Go back to your altitude and your metal water bottles. That's all you got to do. You can take shots at Indiana and the Pacers and his jersey, but you don't have to throw garbage and physically assault someone because they are wearing the wrong jersey. Give me a break and grow up.
Wow, the East Coast hate from the flyover state here in Oklahoma. I didn't expect it to go that. To me, the Pacers fan walking like you know what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah, you're getting yourself into jeers.
No, the thing is walking through and him like talking to the people that are throwing stuff at him and like pointing and like I don't know. He's definitely in the wrong place at the wrong time. But if he chose that, then there's maybe like 10% that could go on that guy for being there. And it's not like they were playing the Pacers. Guy went out of his way in some way to be there.
I do think that guy deserved all of the jeers, all of the verbal assault. The physical assault.
Yeah, you can't do two. Yeah, it's obviously that's obviously way out of line. Tyrese Haliburton went on the Pat McAfee show today to talk about that Pacers fan. And he said, quote, "I want to personally bring you and a +1 out here to Indiana for game 4. Everyone in the organization wants to make sure you're taken care of. Everyone on the teams is excited to meet you." Hey, you know what? If I have to get garbage thrown at me, but I get to go to game 4 in a suite, it may have been worth it for this guy. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, it's absolutely worth it, especially whenever he thought he was just getting into some verbal altercations. I think that the verbal altercation is 100% on this Pacers fan. The physical stuff, come on. Give me a break.
Absolutely too much. 2 of the teams in the conference finals specifically got here by trading away Paul George. The Thunder obviously traded Paul George for SGA and picks that included Jalen Williams, a wild, obviously one of the greatest trades in NBA history. The Pacers traded Paul George, eventually got, they got Oladipo, but they also got Domantas Sabonis, and they got Haliburton in that deal. And then they got Haliburton for Sabonis in the next deal. So it was a little bit of a butterfly effect, but they got him there. There's a report today from Jonathan Givony that teams are expecting the Sixers to package number 3 overall and Paul George to get his star. My question is, will the Sixers follow the same path as these 2 teams? Trade away Paul George and profit by going to the conference finals?
No, they will not. They will not enjoy the same pleasures, because if you are silly enough to give up someone the caliber of even Victor Oladipo at the time for Paul George and VJ Edgecombe or Ace Bailey or whoever you deem the number 3 pick, then you are just a silly franchise and should be buried anyway. I think that the allure here would just be like star hunting. Sure, that's what you say publicly. But, if you're not in love with Ace Bailey and you're not in love with VJ Edgecombe and you're the 76ers, it's a nice sweetener to get off of that Paul George contract and move forward with your cap sheet. But it should not net the Sixers anywhere close to the main piece of contention the way that it did for Indiana and Oklahoma City.
Paul George, $51 million next year, $54 million the year after that. And you think he's going to pick this up? A $56.5 million player option.
Yeah, you can just direct deposit that to his account right now. He's picking it up.
Do the Kobe Bryant contract and pay it all up front. just pay.
They're going to say amnesty him.
Amnesty that and dropped it all in one lump sum. I don't see the Sixers doing this. I do like their future in some ways. I like that they have Tyrese Maxey, Jared McCain. They'll have this number 3 pick, but I don't think that unless Daryl Morey digs like deep into his bag and pulls out like a trade that he used to
He'll pull out James Harden.
I guess so. Ugh. Yeah. That's the one he would have to do, is to pull off that kind of a move again. And I don't know who that is across the league.
No, I think he'll literally just go back and get James Harden and call it a star.
Get James Harden again. I don't know. He's pretty good for the Clippers this year. Big news. Star player is upset. The franchise is going to draft a certain player with the number 1 pick, and they're contemplating requesting a trade. This is a player that was a high draft pick in the NBA. And now they're upset that this team is going to draft somebody number 1 overall. The player is Michael Beasley, and he's upset that his team, Miami 305, is going to draft Lance Stevenson number 1 overall. I'm talking about the big 3. Like, wow.
Wow. I was getting ready to eviscerate Anthony Davis and the Dallas Mavericks and Kyrie and just go on and on about Dallas. But all right, let's talk big 3.
My question is, did you ever think we would be talking about Michael Beasley and Lance Stevenson beef ever again?
No, I can proudly say I never thought that. I never thought in a million years we'd be talking big 3, especially not on May 19th. This is like a July conversation we're having.
It was too good of a parallel between these 2 teams. Absolutely hilarious. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So there, apparently, according to Chris Haynes, there's some drama there in the big 3. Michael Beasley not happy that his team is going to draft Lance Stevenson. So
Haynes briefs. You think Haynes briefs is a Skims guy? I hope he is.
Oh, he's definitely a briefs guy. So don't worry. Have to worry about the boxers.
I'm a briefs guy too.
Also,
I don't wear Haynes specifically. I wear Skims, but
last one quickly. The Cavs and Celtics have both been eliminated from the playoffs.
Count it up.
Who will be back in the conference finals next between the Cavs and the Celtics?
The Celtics. I think the Celtics' demise is greatly over-exaggerated right now. Obviously, does it suck that Jason Tatum is out? Absolutely, it
for
does.
a year.
For a year, it sucks.
They're not going to be back next year.
That's brutal. And yes, are they going to have to make money moves this summer to kind of skirt by financially for a team that they know will not be back at this stage next year? Absolutely, they will. But that taxes in the Boston Celtics, baby. Like they've been bad hardly ever in my entire existence of being a human. And like Cleveland, you can't say the same for any of their sports franchises. But also, like, this was Cleveland's year. And yes, they dealt with some injury, bad luck, but it's like this was Cleveland's year, and it went out in a patter. And there's still question marks around them, question marks that they didn't have a chance to answer because of injuries. But it's like, can Darius Garland really defend enough to get you past 2 rounds? Obviously, we're not going to hold this series against him, Cavs fans, because he was hurt. But it's like, is Jared Allen and Mobley together really going to work come playoff time? Like, they have massive questions to answer, whereas like Boston just has more stability, where it's basically just like, how can you manage? How can you massage the salary cap right now? How can you massage Jason Tatum's Achilles right now and rehab him? And then from there, you're right back on track. I feel like I do think that Tatum is in a position where it's like, I know there's a lot of fear right now. I'd be stunned if he does not return to the player that he is or close to it once he comes back. Look at how Kevin Durant has recovered from his Achilles tear later in life as a player. We're like, yes, is Kevin Durant who he was in Oklahoma City? No, he's not, but he's still an obscenely good player.
Way older.
He's way older. It's like Jason Tatum's going to be just fine with modern medicine, I believe. I fully have faith in that, and I have faith in their front office, and I have faith in the rest of their roster makeup more so than Cleveland.
Interesting. I think I would pick Cleveland because I think they could be back next year, and I don't see a path for the Celtics to be back here next year.
That's fair. That's fair because the East does suck. We should
there are different rules. East. There are just insane different rules. You look at these two teams between these, and yeah, the injuries definitely changed a lot of that stuff. But go check out all these great shows: Locked On Pacers, Locked On Knicks, Locked On Thunder, Locked On Wolves for the conference finals, and then teams at the top of the draft: Locked On Mavs, Locked On Spurs, Locked On Hornets, Locked On Sixers. Great stuff all the time, guys. Thanks for hanging out with us on Locked On NBA Game Night. Go check out Locked On NBA Daily with Doug, Matt, and Hayes. Great stuff all the time, guys. Thanks for listening to Locked On NBA.